YouTube, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the show. Look, Bitcoin holders, they have no idea what's coming. But guess what? The data does. Every cycle has a flip moment, and this time, XRP is the only asset positioned to take the throne. If you think this is just hype, wait until you see the numbers. That wisdom tree just dropped, and we're gonna start right here. Wisdom tree, they didn't dance around it or bury in a footnote. They straight up said it. XRP only needs a 20x from current levels to flip Bitcoin. This isn't some influencer out there who's whispering hopium. This is one of the biggest institutional asset managers on earth, publicly pointing out a math problem that nobody in the Bitcoin camp wants to talk about. Why did they choose XRP out of every asset to highlight this? There's thousands of different cryptos out there, right? Because it's the first time in crypto history where the infrastructure, the liquidity rails, and the regulatory path are evolving in XRP's favor, while Bitcoin, it just sits still. And when you overlay 2025 and 2026 macro structure with XRP's historical cycle pattern, that 20x projection, it stops looking bold and it starts looking very conservative. This isn't XRP's catching up. This is XRP is stepping into the role that it was built for. Now, folks, real talk, if you're watching this and you don't have a plan for XRP cycle, you're gambling. Book a one-on-one call with me. We'll map out the entire strategy, your entries, your exits, your tax structure, OTC flows, even your LLC setup if you are ready to level up. And then make sure you join the free newsletter so you never miss the kind of analysis that move markets before the crowd wakes up. Now, I put out this thread a little earlier, right? Talking about, did XRP miss the bull run? Are we in a bear market? Hear me out on this. Everyone keeps parading around out there, right? XRP missed the bull run. The take's just dead wrong. If anything, XRP closed the last bull run. Let's rewind a little bit here, and you can see it all in this thread. 2017, XRP spent the entire year lagging. It was mocked, it was ignored, it was called a crap coin, it was forgotten about. And then in the final stretch, what happened? It detonated. Over a 30,000% move. One of the most ridiculous runs in financial history. It didn't move first. It moved last. Well, everyone has mentally checked out. Let's look at the 2024-2025 cycle. From October of last year to January of this year, XRP ripped anywhere from 500 to 700% across major exchanges, right? Mainstream media outlets, they reported 300 to 400% gains as legal clarity hit and liquidity returned. The November to January burst, it wasn't random. It was a classic end of cycle XRP blow off. Then what followed? Well, XRP has cooled 25 to 30% down. Bitcoin cooled about 20 to 25%. Total cryptocurrency market cap slid from 4 trillion down to 3 trillion. Macro tightened. Real optimism vanished. That's not a bull market. That's a stealth bear market. The exact purge phase that set up XRP's monster move back in 2017. And now the XRP to Bitcoin pair, it's showing its first potential monthly breakout since XRP's biggest run ever. When that ratio flips, and it's gonna flip, XRP doesn't just rally, it teleports. Everything points to the same conclusion. 2025 wasn't the bull run, it was the reset. October 10th, 19 billion in longs wiped out, resetting the markets. And guess what? XRP is now gearing up to lead the next cycle, not follow it. Which brings us to this, because this next week could be the biggest week that we have seen. Multiple Fed officials speaking. You got the FOMC on the 19th. You got major label market data on the 20th. Volatility always spikes around moments like this. But here's the part that most don't realize. Macro volatility, historically, it benefits assets that have real utility, that have deep liquidity rails, and they have the institutional on-ramps. That is exactly where XRP is silently pulling ahead. Every shakeout, it brings capital closer to utility assets. And XRP is the only major asset with both regulatory clarity and ETFs launching in waves, which leads us perfectly into this. Take a look at this lineup. Canary Capital already launched. Frankie T next. Then 21 shares, Bitwise, CoinShares, Grayscale, Wisdom Tree. This is all coming. Frankie T is going to launch by Tuesday the 18th. Bitwise is coming the day after that, the 19th or the 20th. 2 days after that, you have 21 shares and CoinShares launching at the same time. And then later on in the month, probably around Thanksgiving, you got Grayscale and Wisdom Tree. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 spot ETFs by the end of the month. This isn't a maybe someday scenario. These issuers control trillions and they're opening XRP exposure all within the same month. Bitcoin never had this kind of synchronized TradeFi rollout. Remember that. ETH, they didn't have it either. This is a coordinated liquidity rail buildout, and it's all happening underneath a suppressed price. Exactly how XRP's biggest runs have always started. And right on cue, the Bitcoin maxis are having a meltdown. New emails have now revealed that Epstein-linked money funded early Bitcoin core development. I want you to watch how fast the Bitcoin community is going to try and spin this back to an attack on Ripple or XRP. Where narratives weaken, the tribalism, it skyrockets. They're losing control of the story, folks, and you can feel it. And that brings us to this. The 50 MA moving average just crossed your 200. The dreaded death cross. Oh no, the fear is here. Here's the funny part about this though. Bitcoin, it historically dips into the death cross and then it has a rally anywhere from 70 to 195% after. But that bounce, it has always been the setup for altcoins to outpace Bitcoin the moment Bitcoin slows down. If BTC rallies and stalls, guess what? That is the exact environment where XRP has historically flipped into hyper performance, just like Wisdom's Tree's 20th math suggests. And then we got this. We got the Secretary of Commerce saying that every time Bitcoin dips, I'm buying. This is how you know we're in a different world. Institutional doors, they're not opening. They're being blown off the hinges. Listen.
If you took my stake in my public companies, which is public, and you did the public math, you'd see a couple of $1 billion.
Okay.
Okay. And then at least a couple of $1 billion. And then you'd have, what's Cantor worth? Yeah, I'm not saying. Okay. But things are good for me. How about that? Is that a nice way to say it? Since Cantor owns the stakes in the other companies, it's good for me. So, and I have
like the percentage. You don't have to say exact number, but like, how do you think about either you or Cantor?
I don't have a big enough percentage. I probably have, if I can't say because then people can figure out that no, how much I have. I would say I have hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay.
Okay. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars exposure to Bitcoin. And it will be billions.
I was going to say, so next year when you come back and we'll do this again and you'll be a Bitcoin billionaire. And
yeah, but you remember that model I told you. So if every time Bitcoin dips, I'm going to be the buyer.
Yeah,
so,
I know why you're doing the lending.
You figured it out.
Listen, you don't have to explain that one around here.
So I got the 50% Bitcoin. I got the Bitcoin lending. But basically, what you're going to see is Cantor Fitzgerald is going to be the sponsor of Bitcoin into traditional finance. And so we will be the leader of it. And I'll pull out this podcast in years to come and say, see, I told you, because no one's going to remember.
Of course.
Right. But all the banks, after we do it and show people how to do it right, they'll all copy. And so the asset of Bitcoin.
They're all going to copy. Look, this isn't retail mania, folks. This is sovereign level adoption. And that's the same capital base that will pour into XRP ETFs because they're compliant, they're fast, they're cheap, and they are built for settlement. But don't mix the big picture here. I want you to look at global wealth. 120 trillion in equities, 140 trillion in fixed income, 250 trillion in real estate, 100 trillion in the M2, 30 trillion in gold, and 1.9 trillion in Bitcoin. In that ocean, Bitcoin's a puddle. XRP is a droplet next to that puddle. As capital rotates into crypto via ETFs, sovereign funds, and pension structures, they aren't going to YOLO into meme coins. They're going to load up on the assets built for payments, built for settlements, and liquidity movement at scale. Bitcoin at 85K versus 100,000, 105, 100, it doesn't matter. It's trivial. What matters is the trillions of dollars that are being funneled in for the first time. And XRP, it sits right at the mouth of that funnel. And then we look at this. Bitwise's CEO, he's saying the same thing. We talk about 4-year cycles. I'll blow it up so you can see it. He states, but the reality is that the model is based on bygone era of crypto. Since the launch of your ETFs and new administration, we've entered a new market structure. New players, new dynamics, new reasons people buy and sell. I think there's a pretty good chance that we've been in a bear market for almost 6 months now and are almost through it. The setup for crypto right now has never been stronger. Look, he's spot on here. I've spoken about this. I've done a video actually on this not too long ago, talking about what if we were in a mini bear and we are coming out, and that if your crypto asset does have an ETF, that you are no longer going to see these prolonged bear markets on them, because fresh millions of dollars of capital is entering every single day. And when you stack on 5, 10, 15, 20 different ETFs with different money coming from different avenues, folks, the bear market case, it doesn't last as long. Remember that. As everyone's watching Bitcoin, you should be paying attention on what's actually going on out there. The data, the macro, the flows, and the historical patterns, they all point to something bigger. XRP isn't fighting for second place. It's lining up to challenge first. And the next cycle, guess what? It might actually get there. Hey, book that one-on-one call. I look forward to speaking with you and helping with you. The best investment, remember, is an investment in yourself. Join the newsletter. I'll see all y'all